Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held on August 25th, 2026. Giisuk Yukit, we acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamuckus, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleate First Nation. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Akanahunik are from Yakutat Nucleate and are members of the Ktunaxa-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. And before I call the meeting to order, I want to thank Councillor Ramadas for covering for me as acting mayor last week. Appreciate the support. And I want to thank Youth Councillor Parmar, as this is her last meeting with us and the most dedicated youth councillor we've had yet. She stayed on right through the summer, which is dedication indeed. With that, I will call the meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. And I'm going to add a late item to the agenda, and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that council appoint Michael Boranowski as corporate officer effective August 25th, 2026 to serve until such time as the appointment is rescinded or a successor is appointed. Moved by Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? And just for clarity for folks, we find ourselves without a corporate officer this evening, so we need one to proceed with the meeting. With that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder that the agenda of the August 25th, 2026 regular council meeting be adopted as amended. Sorry. Councillor Hamilton moves, Councillor McIsaac seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. I'll now ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that the minutes of the June 16th, 2026 special meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor? That is approved and unanimous. Thank you. A mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that the minutes of the July 14th, 2026 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. A mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that the minutes of the July 21st, 2026 special meeting be adopted. Moved by Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And finally, that the minutes of the August 4th, 2026 OCP task force be adopted. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Just a reminder that effective August 17th, 2026, the public participation period at council meetings has been temporarily suspended and will resume following the inaugural meeting in November. This temporary measure has been implemented in accordance with the council procedure bylaw section 3.7.3 sub K. I will now ask for a mover and a seconder for the following recommendation: that council enter into the committee of the whole. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And our item of business for the committee of the whole is bylaw 2531 200 Burma Road application update, a report from our manager of planning, Mr. Similini.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a moment while I bring up the presentation.
Sorry, Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I have been advised to recuse myself from this as it's
Thank you, Councillor.
related to my lands adjacent my father.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Just wanted to come forward with an update tonight on the 200 Burma Road file. That would be bylaw 2531, which came forward to council previously in order to rezone the private park area in the Mount Fernie Estates subdivision from private park to RSS, a residential small scale. That was to facilitate an amendment to the subdivision that would result in that area being turned into phased strata lots. So just a quick timeline. On May 12th, the bylaw did come forward to council for first and second reading. And that discussion led to council asking for more information from the applicant, specifically confirmation of the covenants that are up there and the easements and how they were being dealt with by the landowner. That there was also a fairly robust amount of public input at that meeting as well. On May 21st, 2026, the applicant withdrew the rezoning application. So the council resolution for the applicant to come forward with more information sort of became null, so to speak. So that's why we're coming forward tonight with a little bit of an update for council and the public to tie up the loose end of the file. So I just wanted to go over a couple of the covenants first so everyone understands. There are two geotechnical covenants on titles of the lots. One is related to the soils up there. That's a very standard covenant for us when we do a subdivision. So when somebody wants to develop their lot or build a house on their individual lots, they then get a geotechnical report to tell the building official specifically that the soils are okay. And if they're not, then there's recommendations that are put in place. Building officials do have the ability to ask for those at time of excavation, but putting a covenant on title like this just gives them the sort of the insulation that they need to ask for that. The second geotechnical report on title is related to slopes, site-specific geotech for slopes. There's also a geotechnical report that's attached to that covenant that makes certain recommendations. So the covenant essentially says that you can develop based on the recommendations from the geotechnical report. Second covenant is related to drainage, specifically the maintenance or alteration of a drainage ditch or swell at the toe of the slope. That's important that the property owner is responsible for maintaining that drainage ditch. There's several other covenants, but I think that we can get into, if anyone has any questions on them, we can get into the details of them. But those three covenants, the geotech and the drainage, are the ones that really pertain to this file and the discussion that occurred on May 12th. Just again to update council. The city is currently enforcing those covenants. And when we enforce covenants, we typically don't go like a legal route right away. What we do is we work with the applicant or the property owner to ensure that those covenants are being enforced. And as long as there is a path towards any problems being rectified or compliance, a path to compliance, we don't typically go through a legal route. The other option obviously is to go legal with a covenant, but that costs a lot of time and money and staff capacity in order to do that. So I just want to report back to council tonight that through development permit processes, bylaw compliance, chats with the engineering team, the building officials, and the planning team, that the property owner is currently undertaking steps to rectify any situation up there. I believe that the road was paved earlier this week or late last week. There's curb and gutter installed. Storm drainage has been installed, and we're continuing to work with the applicant to ensure that any issues that were potentially up there before are being rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Similini. Questions, comments from council? Seeing none, very much appreciate the update and that you're continuing to work with the landowner to on compliance. I think it's very important. So we'll appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Worship.
With that, if someone can retrieve our missing councillor. Welcome back, Councillor Shoesmith. That moves us on to item 10.1, zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment by, sorry. Sorry, thank you. Thank you. Or, well, you're earning your chops as corporate officer already. Mover is Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, Corporate Officer Bornowski. So that moves us along to zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 2556, 2026, consideration of initial readings, a report from our Director of Planning and Development, Mr. Johnston. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I have a number of slides tonight. I will try and proceed through them efficiently, but accompanying my somewhat lengthy report, I thought it would be in order to go into these in a bit of detail. Presenting tonight on zoning bylaw number 1750, amendment bylaw number 2556, their proposal we're referring to as 5th and 5th for 502, 522, and 542 5th Avenue. Quickly on an agenda, I'll cover the proposed development, then the draft bylaw amendments, a policy discussion, and the recommendation from staff. Starting with the proposed development, I believe everyone's fairly familiar with where we're discussing, but I've highlighted the 3 properties in red there at the corner of 5th Street and 5th Avenue. This site is approximately 2,000 square meters, or about 0.5 acres. Street level view of the site from a few years past from Google. This is at the intersection of 5th and 5th. Oh, my apologies. My apologies. Is that better? Great. Okay, starting with some of the development numbers or statistics, the proposal consists of 43 dwelling units with a breakdown of 8 studio units, 14 one-bedroom units, and 21 two-bedroom units. These are designed on what I would say the smaller side in terms of the physical space of each unit, ranging from about 385 square feet for studios to 915 square feet for the 2 bedrooms. This was an intentional decision by the applicant to aim for a more modest end of the market in terms of what buyers might be looking for. These are not proposed as affordable units in the sense of what you might be familiar with CMHC or BC Housing's definitions of affordability, more considered attainable in terms of just being intentionally designed to be lower cost. The building is proposed as 5 stories, just under 16 meters, with the 5th story being stepped back or set back from the face of the building above the 4th story, the intention there to be reducing the impact of the building on the adjacent streets in terms of the visual impact. And so there are 4 residential stories above the ground floor, which is amenity space, service space, storage, and the parking space. There are 43 parking spaces proposed at grade, both common and private amenity space storage, and the development is proposed to be stratified for individual ownership and sale. And pursuant to BC Building Code, 9 of the dwelling units are proposed to be adaptable, aka wheelchair accessible. On the screen, we have the site plan. The building is focused towards the top right of the site there, right at the corner of the intersection, with parking again below and behind the building. I'll proceed through these images somewhat quickly, but this is the view, a rendering of what the view would be from the intersection at 5th and 5th. This view looking down 5th Avenue towards the Elk River or the courthouse property, with parking in the foreground. This view looking down 5th Avenue again, but from the courthouse property, looking towards let's say the hospital at the end of 5th Avenue. Another rendering of the proposed building showing a bit more detail in terms of some siding materials proposed, as well as balcony space. First 2 stories proposed as brick clad with stucco above. This image shows you a little bit of what that 5th story step back would look like from the ground level. An elevation profile, again, showing the step back approach to the building design, as well as the 4 residential stories and a bit of that parking being covered by a portion of the building. I'll acknowledge staff worked with the developer on the step back approach to the point where we were comfortable bringing something to council to consider tonight. 3 technical studies provided to support the application. 1, a site servicing report looking at the proposed demands, water, sewer, and stormwater. A sanitary assessment, and a laneway traffic impact review, which was mostly taking the lens of safety and ensuring that those parking spaces that are accessed from the lane could be accessed adequately. The conclusions of these studies ultimately are that the site can be serviced with some local upgrades required, which would be, of course, the developer's responsibility to fund, including some potential installation of servicing going through the laneway, some widening of the laneway, and a few other items which the engineering department is comfortable advancing this recommendation and working through the development servicing process were this to advance. On to the proposed bylaw amendment. I wanted to first cover the current zoning of the site. Of course, development of a vacant site often gets a lot of attention, but most vacant sites already have as of right permissions through zoning. So in the sense that a current property owner could build something under the current zoning. So just looking at that quickly, it is zoned P1 public institutional. There are a range of uses permitted. I've listed a few on the site and in the staff report, including arenas, childcare, community halls, group homes, hospitals, rest homes, and more similar uses. There is a 12-meter height limit on the site already. So that would be, again, under current zoning. 60% maximum parcel coverage. There is no front yard setback in the P1 zone, and there's 6-meter setbacks from the other side and rear yards, sorry. One other note I wanted to make on current zoning, because it's an institutional site, we do not do development permits for institutional sites. So were this site to be developed under its current zoning, it would not go through a development permit process. It's just a layer of regulation we do not have for institutional uses. So to accomplish the development proposal, staff have worked with the developer on a proposed comprehensive development 6 zone. The number 6 there just being it is the 6th comprehensive development zone in the current zoning bylaw. This would be a site-specific zone. It permits multi-unit residential in an apartment building configuration. It includes a 0-meter front and side yard setback. Sorry, and on the screen I have the regulation on the left, the number of that regulation in the middle, and then some comparables on the right side of the screen. And I apologize if it's a bit small for viewing. It's also repeated in the staff report. So in terms of front and side yard setbacks, I did just include.
Sorry, Director.
Absolutely.
Councilor Rabidas?
Thanks, Your Worship. Before getting into details, Director, just have a clarifying question. Is our plan going to be to have specific comprehensive development zoning as and when each project comes in? Like, what's the thinking behind this?
Thanks for the question. In this case, this proposal, it could have been accommodated by looking at an existing zone and proceeding through incremental variances to a zone. But one thing you can't vary is density. So in that example, or in that case, we do need to look at a specific zone in this case. What I would recommend looking forward as the city moves towards a new OCP replacing the existing one is that we would design some new zones that feel like they could be repeated and used as appropriate in different locations. And as I would speak to a little bit later in my presentation, typically after adopting an OCP, as we did back in 2014, you would expect to go through a comprehensive zoning update to implement that vision in your sort of most on the ground regulation, which is the zoning bylaw. But that wasn't done in this case. Yeah, so we don't have a great backbone of high density zones that are based on the current OCP from which to work, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
In terms of building height, again, the proposed height of just under 16 meters is reflected there in the proposed zone. And I've just highlighted a number of zones in the bylaw that provide higher or similar maximum heights, including the downtown C1 zone, comprehensive development 2 zone, C highway zone, and the comprehensive development 3 zone. So CD2 is the 901 property, and CD3 is the Whitetail Drive property where there's construction going on right now. And then there's also an NMU zone, which was designed for the Montaigne neighborhood at up to 21 meters. But of course, 16 meters is an increase from the permitted 12 meters today. Maximum density, 43 units, which is about 212 dwelling units per hectare. This is comparable to the density included in that NMU zone in the Montaigne neighborhood. I also highlighted that the C1 zone does not have a density limit. And in terms of an immediate comparable, the old fire hall project that is under construction just on the block next to us has a density of about 220 dwelling units per hectare. So very comparable. Maximum parcel coverage of 50%, as mentioned, a reduction from the current maximum of 60%, but not uncommon elsewhere in the zoning bylaw. But it is more than the R4 or the R5 zones at 45 and 40% respectively. And then minimum parking requirement, 1 parking space per dwelling unit is proposed, which is a reduction of the standard requirement of 1 parking space per studio or 1 bedroom unit and 1.5 parking spaces per 2 bedroom unit. So were the development to comply with the bylaws it's currently written, the gap or the variance there is about 11 parking spaces. So they would have to provide 54 instead of 43 parking spaces if no variance was included in this amendment. I'll also note that the delegation bylaw currently delegates to staff parking variances where the variance is 50% or less of the parking requirement. Lastly, a somewhat unique regulation, but in order to hold the developer to that angular plane or step back approach at the 5th story. So again, that pulling the building back from its face at the 5th story, we have included a regulation that would basically hold that design to the zoning bylaw. On to the policy discussion. So anytime we get a zoning bylaw amendment application, the first thing we do is look at our OCP, and there's several maps therein that tell us how to look at bylaw amendment applications. In this case, looking at the land use designation for these properties, they are currently designated as residential infill and intensification. That is the land use designation applied. As I mentioned, normally after an OCP adoption, so back in 2014, you would expect to go through a comprehensive zoning bylaw update where you would look at the misalignment or the new vision for land, and you would proactively zone accordingly. In this case, we still have 3 sites or 1 site with 3 properties, sorry, that their zoning does not reflect what they're designated as in the OCP. So they are designated for residential. Within that land use designation, there are a number of policies, and those policies both speak to maintaining existing character, as well as directing increased densities towards downtown and calling for a mix of newer or different housing types, including townhouses and apartment dwellings. So I did want to acknowledge there's a little bit of a tension in the policy there. We have, the protection of character, but we also have clear direction to be looking at increased density and higher density housing forms. So it is a challenge with infill development to kind of address those 2 policy directions. Ultimately, balance is the search and the goal. Sorry, while also being respectful of what can be viably developed by the private sector, if that's who you're going to rely on to deliver what you identify as a vision. More policies we looked at in the official community plan. There's extensive policies around support for housing, diversity of type, diversity of tenure, and the need for increasing density where we already have services, where there's no net new infrastructure being created that the city is going to have to maintain, which is the case here. The main town neighborhood has a set of policies within the neighborhood section. One of the policies I'm highlighting here is that higher density was directed in this OCP towards locations close to downtown. I've also highlighted on the screen policy direction that supports reducing parking requirements where there are viable alternatives to walking to services. There are viewscape protection policies in the official community plan. Obviously, this is a major consideration for Fernie, where there are both views of heritage buildings and views of our beautiful natural landscapes. The policies in the OCP speak to identifying and protecting view corridors. That work, to my knowledge, hasn't been done, but we can still interpret and make decisions based on the policies as they're written. It is very challenging to do infill development in a tight area without impacting views. So I do respect that there are going to be impacts to the views, looking particularly towards the mountains, and an impact to the backdrop of what is a heritage property. And I'll talk a bit more about heritage in a slide or two. And just a policy there from the greenhouse gas emissions perspective, which supports infill developments, walkable neighborhoods, where you're reducing the need for taking vehicle trips for daily needs. Transportation in cities is often the highest, if not, or the second most high, or if not the highest output of greenhouse gas emissions from a city. So it is a significant thing to plan for land use that doesn't require automobiles for daily trips. A bit of a scan of some of the taller buildings in town on this slide. I've got the two adjacent buildings, the church and the courthouse. Those are estimated and not to peak, but to ridgeline. We've got the under construction old fire hall building, which is taller than the proposed development at 16.4 meters. We have the childcare mixed use facility on the other side of the train tracks on Pine Avenue that is 16.9 meters, and a couple other comparables there at 901 Second Ave and Silver Rock. Of course, heritage is an area of particular interest, being adjacent, this site being adjacent to multiple heritage properties. On the screen, I've got the OCP heritage designations. So in the OCP includes 2 layers of heritage value. In red, we have properties that have heritage protection by bylaw. And in blue, we have those that were identified in the OCP as having heritage value. To develop either would require heritage alteration permits, which usually involves the engagement of a heritage professional to proceed through a form and character review. However, the site itself is not designated as a heritage property, so that additional layer in terms of heritage alteration is not an expected part of this development process. What we would do is go through a form and character development permit for multifamily development, of which compatibility, compatibility and complementary design elements are a part of that review. The applicant provided a little bit of review and acknowledgement of adjacent heritage buildings, with the proposal including brick at the first and second stories as a complementary design choice, whereas stucco as a more modern choice was, I think, intentional to not conflict or conflict with adjacent heritage design. If the rezoning were approved, the project would still be required to obtain a multifamily development permit. At that stage, it would be reviewed against our building design guidelines. The design review panel is a citizen panel that reviews development permit applications, would be engaged on this file, reviewing items such as architecture, material choice, landscaping, and public realm elements. Briefly, the proposal is directly supporting the housing needs report, in particular, adding a less common home ownership type with stratified smaller units. I also believe it can be considered consistent with council's strategic plan in terms of goals for increased multi-unit development, infill development, and a reduced infrastructure deficit per dwelling unit by the end of the term. Very briefly on financial considerations, we've got an estimated construction value here of $22 million. Respecting council's priority of growth that funds growth, we would recover building permit fees of approximately $226,000 and development cost charges of north of $177,000, as well as annual ongoing revenue of $73,000 in tax revenue and utility rates on the screen there. Just want to acknowledge why the bylaw is proceeding without a public hearing. This is a part of the Local Government Act, the recent changes from the provincial government, which require or prohibit a municipality from holding a public hearing if that public hearing or if that application is deemed to be consistent with an official community plan and the use is residential. So in reviewing of those conditions, we find that this application would be consistent with those terms and the city should not be holding a public hearing. Also noting that nothing would obligate council to approve a zoning amendment application just because it's deemed to be consistent with an official community plan, just that according to this legislation, we shouldn't be holding a public hearing. Also want to acknowledge extensive public feedback received on this application. The number on the screen is 74, but since this was drafted, I believe there are 15 additional letters submitted and received. Key concerns being the scale and height and incompatibility with the neighborhood, as well as adjacent heritage properties, impacts to views, infrastructure and servicing concerns, parking impacts, snow clearing, and not using an existing zone that the city already has in place. Concluding with staff's recommendation, which is to proceed with readings of the bylaw, proposing first and second readings, which means the bylaw would come back to council at a future meeting for further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Questions, comments from council? Councilor Roddy Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. A couple of comments. I noted in the report that staff note that this configuration where there is both the policy statement capturing all multi-unit development and a separate map that identifies specific sites is not a preferred approach. So that struck me. And also upon review of the OCP in its entirety, that also, so we're looking at it holistically?
That's correct. The second part there is how I would intend for that statement to be interpreted.
So we're not looking how it fits into individual policies. We are looking at it as a holistic thing.
That's
Fair?
correct. Yeah.
You did answer a question that I had, which was, I read the tourism strategy and the heritage strategy of 2020, and the heritage strategy of 2020 contemplated a viewscape study. So to your knowledge, that hasn't happened.
Correct. Correct.
And then I'm just going to push back a tiny little bit. I realize that we have not adopted a new OCP, but we have concluded 2 rounds of engagement. And during that engagement, some very strong themes came forward, protecting heritage being one of them. And also the potential extension of the historic downtown boundaries, and also with forming character, discussions about forming character and possibly becoming more prescriptive. And while I realize we can't hold this development to those standards, they are being contemplated, and the information that we've gathered is going to form the draft OCP that will come to us in mere months. So I kind of have to point that out.
Further?
Our viewscapes are pretty critical to community livability, and I'm going to be really blunt here, tourism bread and butter.
Sorry, folks, I'm going to ask the gallery to be quiet, just simply because it allows for more open dialogue at the table, and we don't want people to censor themselves around the table. We want people to speak freely. So appreciate and respect, please respect that. Thank you. Finished? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've been waiting a long time, looking hard for more infill, for developers to come and build in our community. This is what we've been asking for. I'm excited to see this kind of development coming before us. However, I'm also very cognizant of, as Councillor Adia Kelly mentioned, the fact that our OCP is coming up, the number of letters in opposition to this, particularly around heritage and the impact of a modern build, a standard modern build in a neighborhood. It doesn't seem to fit the form and character of this neighborhood. But the one thing that I also wanted to ask about is with these higher density projects, the 3rd Avenue, 692 3rd Ave is a perfect example where we have commercial on the ground floor and then residential upstairs above. And I'm curious why, if there is a reason why we don't implement that into any higher density builds in the downtown core.
Thanks for the question. Intention in the downtown core would absolutely be mixed use. This site not being in the downtown core as the OCP defines it, instead being in Maintown. Commercial wasn't really a directed use from a policy perspective. So that's where staff were coming from. There was some initial consideration of whether using the C1 zone would be a path forward for this site, where staff felt that an extension of the C1 zone maybe it wasn't the right fit at this time. But
Councillor Ramirez?
Thank you, Your Worship. Director, well done with the package that we have in front of us. I think all the information that we need to make a good decision is right here. Kudos to the staff on making this happen. I'm just going to echo some of the comments that I just heard around the table here. Like, again, you're really trying to manage the tension that is there between heritage versus infill development. And you're like really working through what the 2014 OCP gave you. And with that, you come with this conclusion that CD6 and the massing in it is the right approach here. I see the point of view from staff on this. I'll have a question on that in a moment here, but even before I get there, you did mention that, the viewscape work is still pending and that hasn't happened. I believe that Councillor Adia Kelly also mentioned. Now, if we did actually bring in a heritage consultant, let's say, and if they were to review this project, would there be a conclusion from them that, yes, indeed, this is going to affect the viewscape? While it is not fully defined in OCP, but is there a possibility where the recommendation from them might push us towards a project that doesn't look like this?
could you repeat the last part of that statement? I didn't hear the last part. Apologies.
No, not at all. It's so what I'm saying is, if there was a consultant, let's say a viewscape consultant, a heritage consultant who were to look at this from a lens of the viewscape, is this going to have detrimental effect to the way of, how the heritage and the natural landscape looks like? Is there a possibility that the recommendation from them might actually suggest that, hey, you know what, this is too big of a build, the height is too much, this isn't in compliance with what we think is the right look? Could that happen?
Thanks for
Director, sorry, I think you're being asked to speculate, so I'm not sure that's necessarily a fair question.
I agree, Your Worship.
Yeah.
I know it is a little bit of speculation, but if the answer is no, I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I sort of rephrase the question a little bit, if you don't mind? Is there a way, or have we done historically something, and I'm going to pull a name out of the air, like a heritage impact assessment that we could then would provide us with an objective understanding, you know, if it was done by a heritage consultant, it would be subjective, but it would be an expert opinion on the impacts of this to the surrounding heritage landscape.
Thanks for the question or the revised phrasing. Absolutely, heritage professionals exist and can be retained to provide a review of proposed developments, as well as a review of something like a corridor or a view corridor study, or prepare something like that. So if additional information from a heritage professional would support council's considerations, that's absolutely something that you could request and has been done on developments such as the old fire hall there development, which in that example did receive support from a heritage professional for the details and scale that was proposed. So it is absolutely possible. I'll say, maybe if I may add, as there are different opinions about heritage and views around a community anyway, that kind of difference of opinion is also likely reflected in a professional body. But I'll leave it there.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is that satisfactory?
Yes, Your Worship. It's just that where I was going with this is, well, there is a little bit of pending work here. Could we take this opportunity to kind of work through the viewscape gap that we have in the OCP, while appreciating that, you know, the 2026 OCP is going through its motions? Can this be an opportunity to kind of tighten that up while we are on this file? That's where I was going with this.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Adi-Killing?
Thanks, Your Worship. I would like to point out that the heritage study that was done in 2020 included a community survey. So the findings from that study were community feedback was sought and received. And viewscape study was one of the recommendations. Fernie character area priority high, guiding appropriate infill using design guidelines that integrate the character area approach and thinking into upcoming zoning reviews. Action 3.3.2, Canadian standards and guidelines for heritage conservation. There was even a heritage endowment plan contemplated. So with that in mind, and with the tourism master plan also in mind, preservation of distinct mountain character, historical assets and natural environment, comprehensive heritage study, protect historic downtown. I feel, I understand where Councillor Ramadas is going, because I had those same thoughts myself. Should we be getting some more information about the impact to heritage? I also want to say that I really appreciate the work that the developer and the thought that the developer has put into this proposal. It was not, in my understanding, given good contemplation by the developer. There were shadow studies, the information provided to us was really very good. So I'm not trying to in any way diminish this development. I think it's got a ton of merit. I'm just concerned because I think now that we're seeing the mass of the building going up at 692 3rd, it's a little easier to visualize what blocking view corridors or impacting them does. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Couple fairly quick questions about timing, as well as public engagement. So just so we're clear, as I understand it, not only do we not have to have a public hearing, we're explicitly forbade from holding a public hearing on this. Yes?
That's
Right.
correct,
Yeah.
based on our read of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. That's regrettable, because I've received an awful lot of feedback on both sides on this, and as council, we can only vote on what's been presented at the table to council as a whole. And I think there's a lot of valuable feedback out there that we can't reach because of that, which I think is not very good. Second question, if this advances tonight, the first and second readings, when will the third reading be likely to come to council?
Thanks for the question. My understanding of typical process is it would come at the next meeting. If there's more information requested by council, that would be a different story. We would only come back once that information is received.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Borowski?
Thank you. Mayor and Council, procedurally, if you are interested in entertaining the rezoning application, which you're required to do, you're required to consider it. As the director said, you're not railroaded into approving it, but you are railroaded into considering it. So it will need to either have a mover seconder in consideration or die. You can then only move first reading, getting it onto the table, and direct staff to bring you, or request the developer work with staff to bring you additional info. Procedurally, then there's work that happens, and we don't have a clear timeline because we don't know the details of exactly what you're after, have to scope that work. And so that next meeting really is, if it's moving ahead, there are no questions, we can move that ahead as quickly as 3 to 4 weeks, bring it to the next council meeting. Typically, there's that council meeting, committee of the whole council meeting cycle. If that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. I'm glad the idea of a viewscape study and a heritage study's been brought up already. When I first saw the proposal, my first concerns were about our infrastructure issues, because that has been the hot topic for the last, 8 months. And I appreciate the amount of work that the developer put into doing all of the infrastructure analysis, understanding what the impacts were going to be on our pipes, understanding what the traffic egress was going to be through the laneway. But I did also wonder what the impact to our heritage and viewscapes was going to be. And I would be comfortable with moving first reading to bring this on, to put this on the table and ask for a heritage impact study to come back before we move on to the next steps.
Councillor Audie Kelly?
And in doing that, if we were to contemplate that, Your Worship, I would like to, as part of that heritage impact study, so maybe that's about form and character, I'd like to also have it include the contemplation of view corridors, viewscapes, as well as the form and character integration.
Thank you. Sorry, are you finished? Thank you. Councillor Suzma?
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. You know, I haven't made up my mind on which way I lean on this. I'm torn. Very much so. On the one hand, the building over there is going up, and I'm not a technocratic sort of fellow. I don't think that we can perfectly understand and plan everything to the nth degree and have it all work out perfectly for everybody. I'm very much empirical in that I think we should try things and see how that works, and a little mistake or a little thing that we kind of don't like, we can, okay, move on. That's fine. We'll do better next time. I'm waiting to see how that turns out over there. At the same time, there's been a lot of noise made about infrastructure. I'm very happy that's the topic of discussion. I ran on that, and we have a huge, huge, huge infrastructure bill coming due. And when we go to pay for it, every development that we haven't approved, every empty lot is not going to shoulder that burden alongside of us. In addition to that, when we build, the local area quite often sees some upgrades. It's actually not a detriment, it's actually a benefit to that equation. I'm leery of the size and the viewscapes on this, and I'm not sure that I want to advance this. I really, really would love to have a public hearing. To me, that is what I would love. I think I'm okay with the idea of a motion of a viewscape analysis. However, I would add that this project is aimed at the sort of working fellow. We can't have our cake and eat it too. If we ask for everything from everyone every time they build anything, we're going to have very expensive homes that nobody with a job can afford. So everything we ask will drive up the end cost. Won't harm the developer all that much. Waste their time, I suppose, but it will drive the cost at the end of the day for whoever rents that. That might mean the difference between somebody that works with their hands or somebody that has big money from somewhere. And I'm really, really, really hesitant to drag this out into a big thing. My preference would be a public hearing so we can get all the feedback, get it on the table and proceed. In light of all that, I do think Councillor Hamilton's idea is not the worst thing. Thank you.
You see your hand, Councillor McIsaac. I appreciate your comments about a public hearing, but we have to live in the world as it is, not the world as we wish it was. And we are forbidden in this circumstance for holding a public hearing. So let's just be clear on that. And I think we need to advance on that with that level of clarity. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Actually, Councillor Smith, I think, echoed a lot of my thoughts on this. I did want to say that I have certainly appreciated the incredible feedback that we have received. Yes, we haven't had we're not going to have a public hearing, but we certainly have received a body of work from the community, communication about this. I think what I wanted to say about this, and without putting too many extra coats of paint on what has already been said, is when I got elected for the first time in 2008, one of the hot topics at that time was the price of housing. And I can recall the people who wanted to run real estate agents out of town because they were willing to sell houses for more than $250,000. People were outraged and they blamed the real estate agents. How could you do that? It was already a very challenging time for housing in the community. In community survey, in town hall meetings and OCP meetings and OCP implementation meetings, and on for the last 18 years, the overwhelming message from the community is, please create some more diversity of housing. No one can afford to live here. People are terrified. Their parents can't leave their family homes. There's nowhere they can buy into. There's only single family dwellings on a big lot. Their children are leaving. They can't come back because they can't afford to buy anything here. Nothing. If the only thing we're going to approve is a big house on a big lot, all of the fears of the community that they're worried about here are going to come true. All of them. This is the setup for that, for a community of people, only half of whom live here, only half of the time. If we're not willing to make some concessions to build stuff that we just don't like the look of it, in order to solve the single most pressing problem that we've had in our community for the last generation, I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, frankly, it's disheartening. Like, I can't believe that there isn't a string of people with banners saying, yay, finally a private developer is willing to build a multifamily development here. The only ones we've had have been done by not-for-profit housing societies with government work. No one has been willing to do this. It is hard. There are not very many places, especially within a walking area downtown, which we are trying to promote, to build development. And as soon as one comes forward, nope, don't like it. Don't like the look of it. Too close to my church. I'm sorry. I empathize with the people that are concerned about this. I really do. And I'm not convinced that is the right building. I think it is a bit too big, frankly. I will say there's a bunch of big buildings there. The courthouse is big. The church is big. City Hall is big. There's a bunch of big buildings there. But this one, it's going to be pretty big. maybe it's a bit too big. Maybe it's worth having a discussion about whether or not there is an objective discussion about view impact. I mean, I went down there, I walked around, I tried to imagine what it looks like. Am I objective about it? I don't know. So maybe it's worth asking somebody to have an objective perspective on it. It certainly would be nice to hear from more people in the community, create that opportunity to create more input. I certainly would like to hear from people who think that they or their children or their parents would like to have a place that they could afford here. I'd like to hear that. I'd also like to hear from other people who are like, we're willing to live with the cost of the way things are in order to preserve the specific state of our community as it is today. I'd like to hear from that too. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't want to drop the opportunity. I do want to have more opportunity for input. So I would support that particular motion to get it moving forward and ask for some more expert outside input. So that's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to add some wrinkle to Councillor McIsaac's points, I agree, Councillor McIsaac, you made some really good points. However, we have done some phenomenal work in this term in terms of build-outs. If you notice some part of the report, the staff mentions, we have to be at around 530 builds by 2030. And if my memory serves right, somewhere around 360 is where we are at right now. I know how these projects happen. Sometimes you don't fully build out what you say you are going to build out, but still, with 4 years left to that target, we are actually turning a corner with respect to the number of builds. But again, that doesn't dilute the argument you're making, Councillor McIsaac. But all I wanted to say is we have turned a corner when it comes to building at least attainable housing in this last couple of years here.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Adi Kelly.
I'll add a little paint, Your Worship. I do agree that this development contemplates something that we haven't seen. To be clear, your memory was really close. It's 551 new housing units within 5 years by 2030. If everything that is in stream now actually becomes built, that will be 365 new dwelling units. Director, that would be rentals, correct? Not necessarily purchase. I think most of the 365 are rented dwellings.
Jeremy, if you could put your microphone on.
Thank you for the question. Confirming 365 dwelling units either in construction or in stream past development permit. 30 of those are single family or accessory dwelling units, so those would be owned. And the remainder are rental. Yeah.
So the vast majority of those 365 are rental. So this development contemplates ownership.
Correct.
In a strata setting. So I do want to make that clear. I'm not opposed to development, but I am opposed to I want to have thoughtful growth. I don't want to leap on something now and what's that saying about mortgaging your future? So I want to be careful. And the community has indicated to us that thoughtful growth is one of the main themes of the engagement we've gotten so far. So I don't want to dismiss this. I think we should continue to work with it, but I want it to be done thoughtfully and give contemplation to the real impacts that it will have, because it's not about my church or your church or anyone's church. That is an iconic Fernie heritage building, and it's an iconic view, as is the courthouse. They're some of the most important, particularly the courthouse, is one of the top heritage buildings in the province. And I think we have to give that the weight that it deserves. So I'm not opposed to development. I don't want people to think that Fernie isn't open for business and we don't appreciate developers. I do want to clarify to the community as well, Director, if we can, that this development could proceed and our wastewater will not implode because of it. Because there's that narrative out there and that's inaccurate to my understanding from what Director Weir had explained to me previously about growth and the impact on our system. And if I'm incorrect, maybe Director Weir can clarify for folks. But thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. I think that this is one of the most thoughtful proposals I have seen in a long time. And actually aiming at creating something attainable for somebody with a wage is laudable. And I think there is a way forward here, but I think we need to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, my thoughts are maybe somewhat personal reflections, as well as, you know, I appreciate a couple of things. I appreciate the notion of moving the discussion forward, seeing if there is a solution here for all parties. I think that's important and responsible for us as councillors because the point's been made. Like this would be called, I think, the missing middle in many communities in terms of attainable housing for young families, for newcomers that we tend to be missing in this community. So I salute the developer for what they're trying to do here. I think it's a very important piece of the housing puzzle that's missing in Fernie. I do struggle. So I think I would agree. I think we need a professional viewscape analysis, and I think we need a professional heritage impact assessment so that we can understand this. But anecdotally and personally, I think there's two key view corridors in this community. One is down 2nd Avenue toward the ski hill, which we see, the province uses that view in tourism publications. And the other one is down from the library down 5th, past the courthouse and past the Catholic Church with Mount Fernie in the background. Like that's another one of our iconic views. And somebody made the comment earlier about trying something and if it doesn't work, but I think that's why we need more information here, because if we try something and it doesn't work, it's not going to go backwards. Like we're then living with the consequences. And I, for one, I don't want to be responsible for that error if it is an error. Even as a personal observation, fully support 692 3rd Avenue, the old fire hall site. Every morning I've ridden up and it's like, oh, that's bigger. That's getting pretty big. Like, wow, look at that. Finally, they're at the 5th floor, and it is going to take some getting used to. And I appreciate that, but it also fills a need in this community. So I am hoping on the developer's behalf that we can continue the conversation. I don't want to shut it down cold because I think there's a solution that potentially works for all parties. I don't know what that looks like. I don't presume to know. I'm not going to speculate, but I think we need more information in order to do that. And so I would look for a seconder for moving it. Sorry, my language is escaping me, for the first reading, to get it on the table so that we then can ask for those other bits of information. So Councillor Ramadaz seconds. Any further discussion? Mr. Barnowski.
Your worship, just to confirm, you're moving that motion. Ramadaz is seconding?
No,
Oh,
Councillor Hamilton.
Hamilton. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. And I very much appreciate, one, Director, your input, and two, and the work that your department has done, and the conversation around the council table. So thank you. And I would let people know that if this is what you're here for, you're free to leave. Thank you, Director.
Your worship, do you want to provide a specific resolution directing that a report come back, including a professional viewscape and heritage impact assessment?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That need to be a second motion, a separate motion.
Can we just wait till the gallery clears?
Yeah. Yeah. So we would need a subsequent resolution to, yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll give it one more minute. Thank you, Frau. Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to council and looking at our Director of Planning and Development Services. From the discussion, I think it would be advisable to have a specific resolution requesting that staff bring back a report for consideration, including viewscape impact assessment and a heritage impact assessment.
Mover, Councillor Audie Kelly, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you.
Item 10.2. Municipal facilities and parks user regulation and fees bylaw and municipal ticket information bylaw amendments. A report from Bylaw Officer Kramer. Welcome, Officer Kramer.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Before I start, I just want to remind everyone that I'm hearing impaired. My usual aids are in the shop on a warranty work, so I got a pair of loaners. To put that in perspective, my old ones were like driving a Cadillac, and now I'm driving a '76 Ford Pinto. So bear with me. It's kind of echoey. If you yell at me, that's fine. To you, it might be yelling. To me, it's a whisper. All right, so we're going to talk about camping on municipal property. Let's see here. Does that not work? There we go. This one?
Yep.
Okay. So the purpose of my presentation is to seek council's approval for the amendments on municipal facilities and parks user regulation and fees bylaw. The proposed amendments would give us the ability under bylaw services to prevent camping on municipal property. We're going to establish corresponding municipal ticket fines to support consistent enforcement. So a little bit of the background, we received numerous complaints, mostly around behind Independent Foods, the Maiden Lake area. In relation to the number of campers, we did receive complaints about human waste, people defecating in property adjacent to, waste in the garbage cans and related garbage in around Maiden Lake area, and recently traffic congestion. We did have a couple of temporary structures in the Maiden Lake in the background there that was tents that were quickly dismantled by our park services. So on March 17th, 2026, council directed staff to draft an amendment to the municipal facilities and parks user regulation to assist to address RV camping on municipal property. And here we are. So these are the proposed offenses that we looked at. So some of these are not related, but the MTI offenses for the actual bylaw weren't developed yet. So we went through the bylaw and picked up the most important ones. And then we added those to our list of offenses that we'd like to see under the MTI amendment bylaw. Disobey posted rules at municipal facility. Lots of these, because they're specific to a current situation here in Fernie, the comparisons really weren't out there. So we kind of took a general approach. So we're looking at about a fine of about $200. Deface or cut, remove or destroy property or thing, that was consistent with our community standards bylaw and graffiti. So we're looking at about $1,000 fine. Leave garbage or other debris was consistent with our waste bylaw at a $500 fine. Interfere with organized sport or activity, that's $200. Urinate or defecate in public place, consistent with our public spaces bylaw, that's a $150 fine. And then an all-encompassing activity not permitted by permit, a special event permit, would be a $200 fine. And then unlawfully erect tent, shelter, structure on municipal property, $500. Unlawfully camping in a park or municipal property would be $500. And obstruction, which is consistent with our community standards bylaw, is about $500.
Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Officer Kramer, I just wanted some clarification about the ones that are consistent with the existing rules such as defacing or removing property. Are you suggesting that that is the existing bylaw and that is the existing fine amount, or is this a separate fine amount from that?
Thank you, Councillor McIsaac. The fine for under the community standards bylaw for putting graffiti on municipal property is a $1,000 fine.
Okay, so it's just consistent with the existing. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. There's that one right there. Good.
Councillor Shoesmith, did you have a question? Okay.
Don't touch it. One more. There. Thanks. All right. So comparisons. So these are the comparisons from municipalities in relation to camping on municipal property. Lots of the municipalities that we looked at did not have a specific offense for actually camping on municipal property. Lots of them are camping actually in parks. So Euclid was around $50, Tofino $200, Revelstoke is $500, Whistler $3,000. Kimberly was $150, Cranbrook $50, Elkford is $50, and then Sparwood $125, and the second offense was $250. So we took a middle of the road approach, $500. So the recommendation would be that council give first, second, and third readings to the municipal facilities and parks user regulation and fees amendment bylaw. And that council give first and second and third readings to the municipal ticket information amendment bylaw. Option 2, of course, is that council direct staff otherwise, and staff would recommend option 1.
Thank you, Officer Kramer. Questions from council? I'm curious, if I may. So you've recently installed signs behind Independent Grocer, and you've it appears to have moved folks off that. So what now would trigger you to find somebody? So is it you find somebody parked in a neighborhood and it's an automatic $500 fine? Is that correct?
That is an option for us. We're compliant.
Right.
So we always, on my presentation in March 17th, I talked about bylaw officer discretion.
Mhm.
We've had people that have been using their vehicles for accommodations. I've had individuals in the parks that are fleeing from violent situations. We work with them to get supports. I've had seasonal workers that would be in the parks, sleeping in their vehicles, looking for accommodation, housing. We work with those individuals to provide a safe place for them. We're talking about people using city streets for a lifestyle.
Mhm.
So rather than go to a campground, we now have 3 available that they use municipal property, city streets, as a campground. But that leads to a whole bunch of different issues, particularly around sanitation and garbage, right? And then, they're using city infrastructure and amenities, and basically there's no cost to them. The signage around Maiden Lake, because we had so many issues and so many complaints, that we decided that we got to take some action here. And that is under our streets and traffic bylaw, and that is park prohibited by sign, which is a $75 fine.
Thank you.
So the answer to your question is, we cleaned up Maiden Lake with signage
Mhm.
because we had the ability to do that. Now we've displaced it. So individuals that we tell them and say that camping is going to be prohibited in the city limits of the city of Fernie. Here's your options. So please abide by our bylaw. If you don't, this is the recourse that the city will be looking at: enforcement, possible fines, and impoundment.
Thank you. Officer. Counselor Audia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Maybe that's promotion. Officer Kramer, I just want to reiterate for the community, because there's ongoing dialogue. You are actually, and I'm not sure how I'm going to phrase this, but you are working with folks who are facing some kind of barrier in their life. They're not van lifers. They're not just willfully camping to avoid paying. These are folks that are facing a barrier that's impacting their ability to find shelter. So those folks, you're using your discretion. You're trying to help them. You are trying to find safe accommodation for them. It's just so the community understands that bylaw is very good at that, and that's their go-to isn't immediately to slap fines on people. So thank you.
Counselor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. In that same vein, because I too have heard from a number of people with regards to, there are plenty of people in Fernie right now who are working who can find no place to live. There's nothing affordable for them at all. They're living in their cars. They're otherwise upstanding citizens. They're not trying to be a nuisance, but they do need to live somewhere to get their job. We're not the first place to face that particular issue. And I was directed to look at an approach that Canmore has taken to that specific problem with locally employed workers. And they have a safe park program where the city picks a specific area where people who are employed in the community can park their cars on a temporary basis. And I don't know if that's in line with the approach that you're currently talking about, but I am wondering if that is a topic of consideration or something that should be looked at, and I guess formalizing the approach that I think bylaw is taking now.
Thank you, Councillor McIsaac. So in fact, I reached out to Canmore and got a description of their program and exactly what the criteria was, the application process. And so they had indicated to me that in 2025, because there's setup fees, it has to be coordinated and it has to be run properly. 2025, the program from May 1st to September 30th, the cost was $8,500. In 2026, they budgeted 14,625. Basically, what they have is many hours contributed across the organization, but weren't formally accounted for, so the cost could be higher. One position that was reflected in that costing was the lead coordinator role, which was about a 40% of that particular position went towards coordination of this program. So they have 2 sites, and they each have 25 parking stalls. You would have to work 20 hours a week in Canmore, proof of employment, employer or T4. And then they set up a porta potty in both locations, and the cleaning, the 2 porta potties was $730 a month. The security was the biggest issue that Canmore dealt with. Each lot was $700 a month, so $1,400 for both lots. And then they had an estimated $1,500 for signage and $900 for miscellaneous expenses, locks, keypads for the porta potties. So they were only used for those residents that were actually in there. So there is a price tag attached to it, right? And staff time. Is it successful in their community? Appears to be. Could we set something in Fernie? I don't see why we couldn't. But for the amount of time that we go over and we talk to everybody in their RVs, the individuals that are actually looking for housing versus those individuals that are just using the city streets as a lifestyle, those looking for housing is small. I've ran into 2 individuals consistently that are working, that are looking, that can't afford housing here, but are actually working in the community. The rest, it's a lifestyle choice. Yep.
Councillor Shoesmith?
Thanks, Mayor Milligan. Several things. Firstly, I'm happy to give bylaw some teeth, provided they continue to be sensitive and use their discretion. I appreciate that they are gentle with people. Secondly, I think it's a shame we're in one of the largest countries in the planet and somehow we're crowded. That's infuriating. Thirdly, I think that it shouldn't be lost on anybody that we're having a discussion about van life 30 seconds after we had a discussion about a development and costs related to it. Whatever your opinions are on those 2 things, you should kind of look at the 2 of them together for a minute if you're listening. You can't have everything. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And finally, I think that what's presented here is pretty good and makes an awful lot of sense. I would note that areas that are very permissive with this sort of thing tend to have an epidemic of tent cities and troubles. There's more cities in Canada with big problems like this than there are not. And I think we should be very careful we don't wind up like that. So I'm happy to move this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ramadus?
Thanks, Your Worship. Councillor Shoesmith stole my thunder, pretty much all the points that I wanted to make. Officer, I really appreciate the humane way that you actually deal with people with issues. That is taken care of. I really appreciate that. And I have spoken with the community quite a bit about this in the last, 2 or 3 months about this. And what you said in terms of data that, there are folks who are seeking lifestyle choices, who are higher proportion of people who are, using these facilities. That's very consistent with what I have been hearing in the community too. So I'm glad to hear that there is another stream of data coming from the staff that kind of matches with my priors with the community as well. And I agree with Councillor Shoesmith that this provides teeth to the staff. And also what I've been hearing from the community is there's a large proportion of our town that does not like camp town, like the RVs sort of vibe here. So until we figure that out, what that looks like, I think this will provide the teeth and tools required for you to enforce our current bylaws. I really appreciate that, and I'll support this.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I too certainly support the bylaw, but I did have a question a bit more specifically to what you were describing about the Canmore, your research into Canmore's model. And just to be clear, I understood you. The number, proportion of people in town that would be eligible for something like that is very small relative to the number of people who are using our city streets and parks to stay.
It kind of, a Canmore may be, significantly different. I don't have all the information from Fernie. Fernie is a resort community. And so we have the seasonal workers that come in during winter season. And pretty difficult to stay in an RV in Fernie when it's really cold. You got to have some significant heating. Some of these campers are set up with diesel heaters. I've seen them that are ones that have lifestyle choices, right? But I find the need in Canmore may be higher than what is needed here in Fernie for seasonal workers. For just from personal experience of talking to the people, they're actually in their vehicles. Some are looking for accommodation, but the vast majority are here for the lifestyle choice. Yeah.
Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just to clarify, Officer Kramer, the costing that you gave us, is Canmore's model cost recovery, or are the taxpayers funding those costs?
They indicate that it's for cost recovery. And so there is a fee that's charged to the individuals using their service per month. It's set at $100.
So at $100 per month, they're able to recapture 40% of someone's time and the other associated overhead.
Great question. I don't know. I would look at the fact that probably 40% of a full-time equivalent employee, their cost recovery model is not sufficient.
Yeah, that's what I thought too when you said, thank you very much for doing that research, because that puts data that's factual into the discussion.
Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you. Not procedurally, as your corporate officer, but as CAO, I will guarantee you the Canmore is wrestling with what Fernie wrestles with, which is a ton of invisible costs. Like those are just invisible costs in people's time and capacity and productivity that are eaten providing that service. If that council is determined it's the right service, the staff will go and do it, but that there's no way that those fees will recover that cost for that service. Once you start providing them, you absorb a lot of that.
Yeah, it struck me that way as well. Did you have a further question, Councillor Romanes?
Just echoing what CAO was saying, Your Worship, I just feel like it's a huge administrative burden. Again, this is just me speaking, not necessarily the view of the council, but there are much more pressing issues in front of us, and creating a safe parking is a good idea, but we need to do a lot of public consultation before we go that path.
Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you. Just to clarify my communication, not making like a political statement on whether it's worth it or not, just that the cost will be far beyond what those fees are.
Understood.
And of course, if council directs it, we go do it. But
yeah, no, I think, sorry, Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say, and I don't want to suggest that I'm pushing for this at all. I really appreciated the data that Officer Kramer has delivered, because I've been hearing this from people in the community about this as a potential option, but we didn't have a good comparison with what's going on in Fernie. And while I do appreciate that there would be costs associated with creating a safe environment for this, I'm also cognizant of the fact that there are costs if we don't. So there's no free solution to this. We have officers out on dealing with people who are illegal camping and they're rousting them, and garbage is being cleaned up, and human waste is being cleaned up regardless of whether we have a safe place or not. So there's no free option here. But it does appear from, at least from the direct hands-on experience of Officer Kramer, that the struggling worker theme is not as prevalent in Fernie as it is in Canmore. So I think we may be some ways away from needing a program like what they have.
Agreed. With that, I'll ask Mr. Bornowski to read the recommendation, and it's been moved by Councillor Shoesmith. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hamilton.
One moment, please.
No, not at all.
The resolution is moved by Councillor Shoesmith, seconded by Councillor Hamilton, is two-part. That council give first, second, and third readings to Municipal Facilities and Parks User Regulation and Fees Bylaw number 2484, 2023, Amendment Bylaw number 2561, 2026, and that council give first, second, and third readings to Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw number 2041, Amendment Bylaw number 2562, 2026.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Officer Kramer.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council. On a personal note, this is going to be my last presentation to council. It has been a pleasure working with you all to achieve your goals in public safety, and it's been an honor serving the citizens of Fernie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Officer Kramer. It's been a pleasure working with you. We'll just wait a moment while people vacate the room. If you want to get ready, Officer Leach. Item 10.3, Community Standards and Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw Amendments. Report by Bylaw Officer Leach. Oh, are you presenting?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes,
Oh, so it says, yeah, present.
I would like to present, and Officer Leach is available for questions as it pertains to council on the
Okay,
subject
thank you.
matter. So good evening, Mayor and Council. This presentation accompanies the request for decision seeking consideration of amendments to the Community Standards Bylaw, as well as the Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw. The proposed amendments are focused on modernizing the city's approach to noise regulation and provides clearer, more effective enforcement tools. I will briefly walk through the purpose, backgrounds, key amendments, proposed ticket fines, municipal comparisons, and recommendations before council, and then Officer Leach and I are available for questioning. So the purpose of the report is to seek council approval of amendments to the Community Standards Bylaw number 2456 from 2022, as well as the Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw, or MTI Bylaw, number 2041. The central change is to move updated noise control provisions into the Community Standards Bylaw, and then repeal the separate noise bylaw number 1635, which dates back to 1993. The accompanying Municipal Ticket Information, or MTI, amendment establishes corresponding fines so that the updated provisions can be enforced consistently. Overall, the intent is to create one clearer and more modern framework for community standards and noise regulation, rather than continuing to rely on a separate bylaw that is now more than 30 years old. So a bit of background. Council previously considered this matter through a committee direction request and supported staff proceeding with preparation of the amendment bylaws and the corresponding MTI update. The existing noise bylaw was adopted in 1993. Fernie's population, development activity, land use patterns, and community expectations have changed considerably since then, as well as the types of noise concerns being reported have also evolved. In 2026, bylaw services to date have received 8 noise-related requests for service. These primarily are involved with residential parties, construction activity, and wildlife deterrent devices near residential areas. The current bylaw does not adequately address a number of these modern noise sources and has limited the ability of the bylaw services and the RCMP to use MTI ticketing in situations involving significant disturbances. The proposed amendments are intended to provide clear standards and more practical enforcement tools while continuing to balance community livability with legitimate activities occurring throughout the community. So the amendments adds and updates definitions that are important for consistent interpretation as well as enforcement. These include construction noise, objectionable noise, public places, and then specifies quiet hours and special events. The quiet hours are proposed from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. daily. Construction noise has a separate restriction proposed at 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. daily. And the bylaw also identifies specific prohibited noises, including vehicles without functioning mufflers or altered mufflers that increase their noise, excessive horns, squealing tires, unattended vehicle alarms, air horns, and engine brakes. It also prohibits the use of electronic, mechanical, or other devices intended to frighten or deter wildlife. This responds directly to reoccurring complaints about these devices and their impacts on neighboring properties. For objectionable noise, an authorized person can consider the circumstances of the complaint, including the proximity to sleeping facilities, land use, time of day, the duration, the volume, the nature of the sound, and whether it's recurring or constant, as well as the activity producing it. There are also clear exemptions for emergency vehicles, avalanche control, religious bells or chimes, security and fire alarms, municipal or contracted maintenance, emergency repairs, properly used warning signals, and approved special events. The goal is not to prohibit normal community activity, but to give staff a clearer and more balanced framework for determining when noise becomes an unreasonable disturbance. So the proposed offenses in the MTI municipal ticket information amendments here establishes the ticket amounts associated with the new noise provisions. So a vehicle without a functioning muffler or with an altered muffler carries a $100 fine for the first offense and then a $250 fine for the second offense. Excessive horns, tire squealing, unintended vehicle alarms, air horns or engine brakes carry a $200 first offense fine and then a $500 second offense fine. Noise during quiet hours, other prohibited noise as defined by the bylaw, and the use of devices to frighten or deter wildlife each carry a $250 first offense fine and a $500 fine for the second offense.
Sorry, Director Neal. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. When I was reading through this, the first time I saw that, and the first thing I thought was electronic devices. So, but we require electric fencing around chicken coops and trees and so on. And then when I read more carefully in the language before, I saw that it was specific to sound. And I was just wondering, from a clarity perspective, is there value in ensuring that that's what's meant as the noise makers and not necessarily an electric fence? Just a straight up reading of that language looks like it could be any electronic device used to deter wildlife, and yet.
Great point.
Well, and I guess because without seeing the whole thing in context, is that specifically in the noise section of the bylaw? So it would be, so it's just me is what you're saying.
If I may just refer to the bylaw here.
Mhm.
And it was only in the column of proposed offenses and fines that there's not all the other things refer to noise. In those ones, it just says make or permit the use of electronic device to frighten or deter wildlife. It doesn't refer to noise in the fine list, but it does in the language leading up to it. So.
Yes, it is under the section of prohibitions, section 3.3, and it is read as no person shall use or permit the use of any electronic, mechanical, or other device to frighten or deter wildlife. But the Article 3 is the following noises are prohibited.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see the clarity
Okay, thank you.
in
Councillor
there.
Ravenous?
Thanks, Your Worship. While on this topic, I just want to bring some real life example, Director. I'm sure some of my colleagues were also present in one of the meetings that we were having during the Monday Council Cafe. So essentially what it was, the boat launch area, for example, is becoming a gathering space, and there is, people are congregating there, and that sound kind of goes to the top of the residential area on the top of 5th A, which street I'm talking about. So if, given that kind of a situation, what, like, how will that work out? Like, can the residents there actually call the bylaw, and how do you determine whether this is a legitimate case or it's just a person's preference with the noise or lack thereof?
Thank you. If I may, and then Officer Leach is going to add as well. In particular for the boat launch area that is becoming quite popular as a gathering space, then the quiet hours would be applicable, and the way the amendments are written as well, that the RCMP can also enforce the bylaws if it is the late into the night. And then Officer Leach can add on as well.
So regarding noise, that type of noise, whether it's at the boat launch or somewhere else within the municipality, so we treat calls that come in are essentially just, it aids us in investigation. So once we received a record of concern by an individual, we would definitely go down if it was in our time frame, like our work frame. Obviously, we try to educate first, the usual. We don't want to be ruining people's fun. That's not the intent whatsoever. It's just that we want people to be more respectful of others around them. So this bylaw will hopefully provide us with the opportunity to be able to enforce that, to help make it just a more sustainably, just a better community for people to reside in.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this graduated structure of the MTI offenses is intended to encourage voluntary compliance, as Officer Leach said, while providing meaningful enforcement response for the repeated and the ongoing violations. These fines are consistent with the city's existing municipal ticket framework and are intended as enforcement and a compliance tool rather than like a source of revenue. Just for reference as well, staff reviewed noise-related penalties in comparable and neighboring municipalities. The city of Roslyn, Barwood, Kimberley, Golden, and Lake Cowichan all have noise-related fines with a range of anywhere from $100 to $500 in penalties. So the proposed Fernie fines therefore falls within the same general range. And this comparison supports the proposed graduated approach, like lower penalties for initial offenses with higher penalties where the offense is repeated or involves more significant prohibited noises. So the proposed amendments can be administered within the existing staffing and operating budgets with no additional staffing or expenditures required. And staff are recommending that council give first, second, and third reading to community standards bylaw with the resolution there that I can allow the corporate officer to read. And it incorporates modernized noise provisions, while the MTI amendments establishes the corresponding ticket offenses and fines, as well as it would repeal the old and outdated noise bylaw number 1635. So if this proceeds through, staff will update the city's website, the bylaw information materials, and then communicate the new quiet hours, exemptions, and prohibited activities through the regular channels and with some perhaps like targeted outreach. And the amendments are intended to provide clear and balanced enforceable framework that better reflects the current community to support a safe, healthy, and livable community.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Director Neal. Officer Leach, further questions, comments from council? Seeing none, I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff's recommendation is that Community Standards Bylaw number 2456, Amendment Bylaw number 2558, 2026 be given first, second, and third readings, and that Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw number 2041, Amendment Bylaw number 2559, 2026 be given first, second, and third reading.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. How's council feeling? Anyone need a bio break? Are we all okay to continue? Can we take a 2-minute recess, please? Ms. Fetzko?
Thank you.
Thank you. Could we reconvene, council? Whenever you're ready, Ms. Fesco. Thank you. Welcome back. Item 10.4, new water and wastewater service connection charges amendment. Report from our Director of Engineering. Director Weir, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of my report tonight is to describe a proposed revision to the type and amount of fees that the city collects to facilitate new service connections to residential parcels in Fernie. So this slide provides some background on the current process for installing services to a residential lot. For context, in the last couple of years, we've had about 7 to 9 of these per year. When a homeowner or landowner wants to add water, sewer, or other services to a residential lot, the city uses the process established under these two bylaws, the water connection user charge bylaw and the sewer connection user charge bylaw. And it's generally for subdivision or densification of a lot. So for sometimes the addition of a laneway home or splitting of one lot into two. It is important to distinguish this from larger development projects. So if a development requires more extensive infrastructure than just new service lines, such as extending a main or roads or anything along those lines, it would instead proceed through a development servicing agreement under our subdivision and development servicing bylaw, which is a more complicated process, involves securities and professional engineering review. And so these amendments are specifically focused on service line installations that fall under these bylaws. So under the current process, an applicant first pays a $400 connection fee. Staff then assess the servicing requirements and prepare a quote for the work. And then where appropriate, we obtain a quote from an external contractor under our standing services agreement with a local contractor, which is a publicly procured agreement. The quote is then provided to the applicant, and it includes the actual cost of the work plus a 15% administrative charge. And then once the applicant approves that work, the installation is completed, the final costs are charged to the applicant with the initial $400 connection fee credited against the final amount. So the main issue with the current approach is that a 15% administrative fee is tied directly to the cost of the servicing construction. So this means that a resident with a more expensive installation automatically pays a higher administrative fee, even though the city and the Engineering and Public Works Department might not have to do more work. So for some context, over the past 2 years, the administrative fee has averaged about $1,200 per service, with fees ranging from $580 to just over $2,000. And so that means the service line installs are, costing in the realm of $15,000 to $25,000 per set of services, depending on where they are, how many services, the length, that kind of thing. So the cost of that construction can vary significantly based on things like length and depth of service, the need for traffic control, the need to replace a sidewalk. And so those factors can greatly increase construction costs, but they don't necessarily increase the amount of staff time required to facilitate the connection. There has also been some changes in how we do these service connections over the last several years. Most service installations are now contracted out. We used to do most of them ourselves. The public works staff are primarily focused on maintaining our existing infrastructure, responding to issues and facilitating repairs of that infrastructure, and that keeps them busy. And so most of the time, while we do use these installs as, to keep our skills sharp occasionally or to If we have some downtime, most of the time our teams are too busy to accommodate this type of work. Also, in the last few years, construction costs have increased. As you know, from our IICP work and all of our project costing, we've seen project costs inflate 50%, and staff salaries have not increased at that same rate. And so therefore, the city's actual administration cost is not equivalent to the percentage anymore. So we're proposing a simpler, more equitable flat fee approach for any new water, wastewater, or storm service. And we assess the amount of time that it required to make these happen, which includes reviewing the service configuration, somebody conducting some field reviews, coordinating the repair of the surface, updating mapping infrastructure to show the new services, coordination with the property owner and the contractor, and facilitation of the payment. And the recommendation is that council begin the process to amend the water and sewer connection bylaws to better reflect our costs and ensure that we're retaining or that development-related servicing costs are still paid by the benefiting party, the person who's developing their land, but that we're not generating revenue on the service.
Thank you, Director Weir.
So one more thing,
Carry on.
while that does conclude the main content of my presentation, I did want to highlight an error in the language presented in your agenda package in both bylaw revisions. So the item 7 you'll see there, I would like to request that the words factoring in the $550 fee from step 1 above be first removed to amend the amendments before you provide or consider readings. And the language is just unclear and creates ambiguity for future use. And I apologize for the oversight, and it's unneeded in the new revision of the bylaw. And that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. So just to make sure that I'm understanding the language in the presentation and in the report, water, wastewater, sewer, 550 per connection. So if someone is getting a new build and they're getting all three, they would pay 1650, or would it be one 550 fee because it's one time?
Mayor, through to Councillor Hamilton, per service, 550 is the suggested rate, as it does take more effort to facilitate additional servicing, and it's a different crew that goes out and does the locates, and yeah.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, I did want to say thank you, Director Weir, for the sense of fairness it feels like in this. It's a flat fee. Everybody's paying the same, and they're not being penalized because they've got a more complex connection. So very much appreciate that. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. Just one follow-up. Given that we are now at a flat fee, I believe it said in the report it said a 1-year increase of $50, but is that going to be an annual increase? Just to keep up with our inflationary costs and everything?
Correct. I believe that's what Director Bird had intended, was one per year, $50.
Thank you. I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Thank you. Through to council, just before I read it, what you will hear is a pair of resolutions to amend the bylaw as it's presented, and then move, second, vote. And if that carries, then a pair of recommendations to provide readings to the bylaws as amended. So if we start with the amendments, that the water connection and user charge bylaw number 1594, amendment bylaw number 2564, 2026, be amended by deleting the words factoring in the $550 fee from step 1 above, and that the sewer connection and user charge bylaw 1593, amendment bylaw number 2563, 2026, be amended by deleting the words factoring in the $550 fee from step 1 above.
Mover, Councillor McIsaac, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Following that the Water Connection and User Charge Bylaw number 1594, Amendment Bylaw number 2564, 2026, as amended, be given first, second, and third readings, and that the Sewer Connection and User Charge Bylaw number 1593, Amendment Bylaw number 2563, 2026, as amended, be given first, second, and third readings.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Director Weir. Item 11.1, fleet procurement, Toro Groundmaster 4000D. I think you made that up. Report from our Manager of Public Works. Ms. Campbell, welcome.
Mayor and Council. Here, there we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So today I'm seeking approval for purchase of replacement of our Toro Groundsmaster 4000D mower for use by the Parks, Facilities, and Recreation Department. This equipment is a critical asset used to maintain sports fields, parks, and other turf areas, green spaces throughout the community. And the current unit has reached end of service life, and the replacement is necessary to maintain service levels and operational reliability. There we go. So some background here. The Public Works team oversees fleet maintenance and replacement of the city's fleet, which is why I'm here. And during the 2026 budget development, we identified the replacement of 2 aging mowers in our 2026 fleet replacement plan. One of them being the 2013 Toro Groundsmaster, as mentioned before, and also the 2013 Jacobson Turf Cat. So both pieces of equipment have reached their end of useful life, which is projected at 10 years in accordance with the city's fleet replacement policy. But due to significant increases in equipment pricing, along with everything else, as we discussed earlier, staff are recommending that available funding be focused in replacing the Toro Groundsmaster this year. And as it's the most heavily utilized mower in the fleet for the parks team and is essential for maintaining the parks, sports fields, green spaces, as mentioned before. The existing unit is experiencing increasing maintenance requirements and reliability issues, which have resulted in much more downtime during peak operating seasons. And to date, we've spent just over $20,000 on maintenance, repairs, and labor. So that includes everything from since 2013, since we procured it, and everything including oil changes and regular maintenance, as well as breakdowns and everything else, mechanical time as well. And so the repairs that would be necessary to get it functioning back to optimum use would again be around $17,000, which was quoted from our mechanic recently, to get it back in functioning order. So our financial considerations. So the approved 2026 capital budget includes $116,763 for equipment reserve. And for that, that's for the mower replacement. $85,000 of that was for the Toro, and $31,000 was for the Turf Cat. The procurement cost of the replacement for the Toro alone, the Groundsmaster, is $125,851.82. And that's using Canoe procurement and for our improved municipal pricing. This results obviously in a funding shortfall of $9,088, which staff recommend be funded through an additional draw from the mobile equipment reserve. We would then defer the Jacobson Turf Cat replacement to a future year, and this allows us to focus on replacing our highest priority asset, and while still remaining fiscally responsible and within the reserve capacity. So our staff recommendation is that council approve the purchase of the Toro Groundmaster 4000D for the total cost of $125,851.82 and amending the 2026 financial plan to increase the mobile equipment budget by $9,088 coming from the mobile equipment reserve to fully fund this purchase of the Toro Grandmaster 4000D. These recommendations are to ensure that continued service takes place and reduces the risk of continued equipment failure and supports safe and efficient operations for our park staff. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Manager Campbell. Councillor Adia Kelly.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just a little confused here because the report says 125,851.82 plus PST and GST, which would be put another 15K. Or was the tax already calculated in and the report just has the mistake of saying plus tax?
Thank you for the question. So the PST was included. I believe that is a misprint. It would be GST that was not included.
So 125,851 plus 5% GST.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was factored in. Thank you
Okay.
for that.
Thanks. And then could we just get the balances of the reserves once those figures are dealt with?
Would you like a moment, our acting director of finance? Okay.
Good evening, Council. So the balance of the mobile equipment reserve after the projected contribution and capital expenditures is 2.4 million. So it has sufficient funds to fund the additional amount of the $10,000.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you. $125,000 seems like a ridiculous amount for a ride-on mower. Full stop. The question I was originally going to ask was what was the original budgeted amount for the two things? So I do appreciate you giving that clarity in your report, but seeing a 50% increase from what we were budgeting to what the actual costs are, is that an error in our budgeting, or are we starting to see in real time the impacts of US tariffs? Because I know Toro is not a Canadian company.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hamilton. So this 85,000 that was originally we had based that procurement cost and budget cost for was from historical data that and we didn't get updated quotes prior to budget season last year. So we've recognized that this year. I'm already in the works of getting quotes for next year's procurement to make sure they are up to date. I had just utilized some older numbers that were unfortunately out of date at that time. So there was a lesson there.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith?
Thank you. So we'd planned on getting a turf cat, but now that's not in the budget. When will we be getting the turf cat with current plans?
Yeah, great question. I looked into this and talked with the park staff and director and manager there, and the Jacobson Turf Cat is not the ideal piece of equipment, and along with the mechanic as well, we would like to ideally put everything into the Toro family, keeping in capacity with what our mechanic is aware of, and also Jacobson is also starting to not reproduce parts as they used to. So this is a path that we'd like to go down potentially next year, is getting some quotes for a Toro replacement, same, but not going that Jacobson route again.
Councillor Ravenous?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just two parts to this. One is a comment and another one is a question. The comment is I have been seeing lawn mowing, the Annex Park, for example, it has gotten better. So I'm just assuming that once you have more, no, maybe I'm mistaken, I don't know. I feel like it is improving and that despite having challenges with your equipment, I'm just hoping that with newer equipment, we'll have better resulting lawn in that space. Just a personal comment. With the reserves, equipment reserves, we say it's about $2.5 million, $2.4 million at this point in time. Can someone just give us a refresher on what equipment purchases we are making in 2026 or 27? I'm sorry, I should have known, but it's been a little bit of time since we had our capital budget session, so I just wanted to understand.
The budgeted expenses or new capital budget expenses were for the lawn equipment of the $116,000. And then there was some upgrades to the bylaw truck. I believe, don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was around $15,000 total. And then also a truck canopy cover for back of a pickup truck was the 2026 new capital mobile equipment.
Thank you. And just because that question reminded me, did we were looking at Vactors, the vac trucks. Did we procure all those? Was there two, a big one and a small one? I can't recall.
Yep, last year, so we procured a brand new large Vactor that's utilized by both utilities teams, and then we also got a sweeper / mini vac last year that was procured. So we actually just received the sweeper mini vac a couple weeks ago now, and it's in use and got some very happy staff.
Okay,
yeah,
awesome, thank you. Mr. Logan.
Yeah, if I may, sorry, just to remind council, we also had a generous donation from EVR for a Zamboni as well, which was also due for replacement in 2026.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I'll ask our corporate officer to read the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that council approves the procurement of the mower Toro Groundsmaster 4000D for a total of $125,851.82 and amends the financial plan to increase the 2026 mobile equipment budget by $9,088.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Shoesmith. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Campbell. Fernie Outdoor Rink Society proposal review. Report from our Director of Planning and Development. Welcome back, Mr. Johnson.
Thanks, Your Worship. I've only got about 30 slides and I'll try and be effective, but no, just kidding. I've kept this one brief as council has seen this a couple times before.
Councillor Hamilton.
All right, a few slides to accompany the staff report. The last time council saw this, council gave staff direction to review some alternative site options, come back with the preferred option, and come back with a lease agreement for that preferred option. So staff developed a site selection matrix, which is outlined in the staff report, and reviewed a total of 8 sites across the city. I'm happy to dig into that review if council is interested, but the conclusion of that review was that the site on the Aquatic Center grounds that was requested and proposed by the Fernie Outdoor Rink Society is the best site on a balance of factors: parking, grade, access to utilities if they need them, cohesion with other recreation amenities, things like that. So staff were happy to conclude the review process with that recommendation, and then proceeded into developing a draft lease agreement, which we have the Society's support in bringing to council tonight as presented. a fairly standard set of lease terms, a 30-year lease. It contemplates both phase 1 and phase 2 of the society's proposal, which phase 1 being the pad, phase 2 being the roof over the pad, phase 3 being the cooling plant, which in the lease agreement requires that it would come back to council for further discussion and decisions because that is a substantial undertaking. The terms of the agreement also include that they would have to construct phase 1, being the pad, before November of 2027. And in terms of ongoing performance on the lease, there's a few items there. One of them is performance against an operating agreement with which staff are developing right now. The other is operating the ice rink for 2 consecutive winter seasons. Otherwise, standard terms in terms of insurance, indemnity for the city, no operational costs anticipated to the city to maintain this within the lease space is the goal and the outcome of this agreement. So the recommendation is to approve the lease agreement as presented. If that is council's direction, we will also complete the notice period before having that lease signed by both parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Ramirez.
Thank you, Worship. In the agreement, there's no specific clause for making repair. I think it was, you identified it in your report as well, that if something happened to the facility, damage of some sort, there's nothing there that kind of forces them to repair. So I guess I'm just kind of curious what remediation or mitigation of, as an example, the roof goes on, we have a windstorm, it blows it down, crashes it, the site becomes unusable, but they don't have the funds to repair the roof. What happens there?
Thanks for the question. Just reviewing a term in the agreement here, if you can bear with me.
Yeah, please. Mr. Logan?
Yep. Well, the director's looking that up. I can speak to the operating agreement. Actually covers some things related to that, where the society is responsible for the operation, maintenance, and repair of the multi-purpose pad. So there's a number of things in the operating agreement that speaks to who's responsible for that.
Okay, that's important clarification. Thanks.
Thanks. And just clause 9 of the lease agreement does identify our ability to provide notice that a repair needs to be made. And if they fail to complete that, there would be recourse through the lease.
Councillor Ramirez?
Thanks, Your Worship. Again, just a comment, not a question. And this is again an excellent example of collaborative work here. I think there was a healthy tension when the ODR Society came to us and we were not clear about what the location was. We all thought intuitively that Aquatic Center is the right place. And then we had a discussion around, oh, is there an alternative? And then go back and do that homework and come back to the same conclusion as before. Just shows that there's a lot of rigor here, as well as, again, just a collaboration between us and the society. So well done for both the staff as well as folks from the society here.
Councillor Kelly.
Actually, my question got answered. Thanks, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. Just a very quick question. And this was with regards to the insurance summary, and it's not just specific to the Outdoor Rink Society, but because there is a 30-year lease involved, I'm going to ask this question. I know from other organizational work that the municipal insurance agency has been pushing municipalities to increase the baseline level of insurance for a lot of external users. If it comes to pass over the next few years that MIA recommends to municipalities that they actually be charging $10 million insurance, for example, for the guarantee of an existing $10 million insurance policy on behalf of a third party, how do we deal with that with the 30-year lease that explicitly says $5 million? Like, how would that get resolved? And maybe this is a legal question and not necessarily a question for your department, but Is that something that we can actually go back and revisit if we're given direction by the MIA? Do we know?
Thanks for the question. I would appreciate some support from a colleague if the CAO might be able to help me here.
I can touch on the lease agreement itself. The requirement is a minimum in the lease agreement, and the agreement can be amended, but would take negotiation and agreement from both parties to amend that lease. It is at the level currently within the MIABC recommended framework for the level or for the type of activity and level of risk that we anticipate. But it is an agreement that is a snapshot in time and would require negotiation if that needs to change in the future.
Not gonna turn on that. Oh, it's dead.
Yeah.
I think we all, everybody on this side.
Oh, apologies. If we can take a 2-minute recess, let's troubleshoot the microphone issue.
Mine still works.
Functional.
We're back.
We're back.
Is there anything?
Thank you, Ms. Fesco. Did you have further comment, Councillor McKenzie? No. Councillor Audie Kelly, you had a question? Okay. Seeing no more questions, I did want to say first, of course, always congratulate the Outdoor Rink Society for all their hard work that they put into this, but also thank staff for the due diligence that you've done in the selection process and coming back with a very concise report. So very much appreciate that. With that, I'll ask our CAO/CO to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The recommendation is that council approve the lease agreement with the Fernie Outdoor Rink Society for the construction and operation of an outdoor rink and multi-purpose recreation pad at 250 Pine Avenue, and that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the agreement upon completion of the required public notice period.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Discussion?
Yes. Just in the recommendation, it says chief administrative officer.
You're correct.
Yeah. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Director. Item 11.3, Terry Fox flag raising requests. Report from Mr. Logan, our Director of Parks, Facilities and Recreation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. No PowerPoint for this, just a quick verbal description of the report. So the report follows up on Council's July 14th direction regarding the Terry Fox Foundation's request to support the 2026 Terry Fox Run. The foundation has requested that the Terry Fox flag be displayed from September 14th through to September 20th. But unfortunately, those dates were taken up by previous flag requests approved by Council. So staff reviewed alternative locations and are recommending the Fernie Courthouse, which allows us to accommodate the Terry Fox request while respecting the existing City Hall flag commitments. So because of our current flag policy, it identifies City Hall as the location for special event flags to be flown. Displaying the Terry Fox flag at the courthouse falls outside of the policy and therefore requires your approval. So staff is recommending that council approve the request and authorize the Terry Fox flag to be flown at the courthouse for the requested period.
Thank you, Director. Are you moving it? Moved. Well, I'll actually ask the corporate officer to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. it is that council approve the Terry Fox Foundation flag request in recognition of the 2026 Terry Fox Run and direct staff to accommodate this request at the Fernie Courthouse as an alternative location.
Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor Audie Kelly. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 11.4, Visitor Information Services Lease and Service Agreement, a report from our CAO.
Thank you, council. And one moment, I'll have a brief presentation up. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The report, as you noted, is regarding the Visitor Information Services or Visitor Information Center lease and Visitor Information Services Service Agreement. These are two agreements that staff have been working on with Tourism Fernie and also the Chamber of Commerce for some time. The purpose of the report in this presentation is to provide council an opportunity to see and consider a lease and a service agreement with Tourism Fernie to occupy and operate the Visitor Information Center facility for a period of 5 years, to also assume provision of visitor information services from that facility, or if that facility is modified or redeveloped, an alternative facility, to specifically also phase out the funding of that service using property taxation, and to enshrine a sublease for the Chamber of Commerce that would support their core operating ability and the extended services, which, as you know, have now advanced with the provision of economic development services for the next 3 years with the City of Fernie. The initiative was originally started or initiated by Tourism Fernie and the Chamber of Commerce in cooperation, who presented to council pitching the idea of realigning visitor information services with the organization that most clearly has the mandate to provide visitor services and with funding, where Tourism Fernie has access to the municipal and regional district tax funding, compared to the Chamber. Key considerations. We're looking now at an initial 5-year term. This allows Tourism Fernie the ability to trial the ongoing operation and actually work collaboratively on a long-term plan for the redevelopment of the facility and/or the facility and grounds. It supports the Chamber with continued sustainable operations in occupying the space, and it does create a definitive timeline for the funding out of property taxation going to the service, shifting it to MRDT and other sources. If we start with the lease, that's the foundational document. It is for a 5-year term starting this January that allows for a transition through the remainder of this year before the switch happens. It does seek only $1 rent, but there is a proportional share of utilities based on occupied leasable space. This is our new standard that we've been achieving with all our tenants or endeavoring to achieve with all our tenants and community partners within publicly owned facilities. It clarifies roles and responsibilities in a way that's generally consistent with our City of Fernie standards. It includes the former Emergency Operations Center. That's a little room upstairs. That is no longer used. We have worked with the RD to vacate that space. It does not include Fernie Search and Rescue space or impact Fernie Search and Rescue. And in fact, we have clarified our common understanding with the partners that should that facility be redeveloped or should activity there necessitate the removal of FSAR as a tenant, that they would be responsible for working with us to locate a new space for Fernie Search and Rescue to support that critical activity, which is also a very critical service to visitors of our community. It also recognizes the Chamber's valuable contributions and requires a sublet or provides leverage for the city to ensure a sublet at manageable terms is provided for the Chamber. All three organizations have expressed their commitment to the long-term sustainability of the three partners. This provides a legal mechanism within the boundaries of what we can legally provide to do so. The Chamber had led the effort of redeveloping that site to what it is today, a visitor information center and the home for two important organizations in the community. Moving on to the service agreement, it as well is for a 5-year term starting in January of 2027. It's largely consistent with the service agreement previously in place with the Chamber of Commerce. However, it has some tightened up language. It provides for a phase out of property taxation funding over that 5-year term, starting in 2027 at $90,000, reducing to $25,000 in 2031, after which there would be no property taxation funding for visitor information services, and a new agreement would need to be negotiated. It does clarify responsibilities and commitments, including who supplies equipment, materials, consultation and coordination on the use of the grounds, and planning for the future. This gives us some formalized language to ensure that we're coordinating around the use of the grounds for booked activities or redevelopment of the grounds. And it also formalizes annual reporting. That's in keeping with our community partner agreements, and it brings Tourism Fernie firmly into the community partner program, which is, I think, a great advancement in our formalized relationship between the two organizations. Staff believe there's strong strategic alignment to the effort, meaning specifically alignment with Council's adopted strategic plan. This proposal advances both initiatives in the quality services and livable community priority areas. It initiates dependable, sustainable visitor information center and visitor info services that are best aligned with the experts in the field and their mandate and the funding sources for those activities. It provides sustainable engagement with the chamber and sustainable community services or extended services there with the sublease. And the formalized partnership develops improved trust and through regular reporting, collaboration with the organizations. So with that, staff are recommending that Council endorse the lease and agreement attached to this report and authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the documents following completion of the required public notification period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bornowski. Any questions, comments from Councillor Audie Kelly?
More of a comment, Your Worship, than a question. I would just like to thank very much the hard work of staff and the organizations. I have been throughout our term lucky enough to be the liaison for both First Tourism and then the Chamber. And I think the collaborative effort on their part and then on our staff's part has brought something very good for the community. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to add on that Councillor Audie Kelly's excellent comments there, that level of cooperation and collaboration has not always been thus. And so I think it's great to see, and I think it speaks well to the longevity and efficacy of these organizations in the long term in the community. So I think this is great.
Thank you. Further? Seeing none, I'll reread the recommendation, sorry. That Council endorse the lease and agreement attached to this report and authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute the documents following completion of the required public notification, period. Moved by Councillor Ramdass, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Made you wait. Thank you. Moving on then. Reports from council members. Let's start with our youth councillor. It's your last meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Milliken. As you mentioned, it is my last meeting, so I just wanted to thank all of council, Mayor Milliken, and all the staff for welcoming me in the space that I wasn't so familiar with. I learned so much in this position, and I'll carry those lessons with me as I pursue further education and into my career. And I also wanted to thank the City of Fernie for allowing me to act in the role of youth counselor. I had fun and I learned a lot, so thank you to everyone.
Thank you, and thank you for your commitment. Councillor McIsaac.
Thank you, Your Worship. See, I knew you had a speech ready. Not too much to report, Your Worship. I did want to say I had the opportunity to speak to a group of council candidates last week, which was great. It was nice to see some turnout from there. I'm hoping that I'll put the call out that there's some increasing competition for them coming forward. So if you're considering it, there's still lots of opportunity out there.
Thank you. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Actually, nothing much to report. I had an extensive report last week, so nothing to report this time, but I'm looking forward to the Legion centenary celebration. That'll be my biggest thing for the next week here.
Indeed. Councillor Hamilton.
A very similar boat. Had a report last week, but not much to report in the past week. But I do want to take a moment and thank Youth Councillor Parmar for being our youth councillor this year. It's been a fantastic experience working alongside you and hearing your thoughts and perspectives. And to any youth who are listening, or perhaps more appropriately their parents, if you have a child who is considering or potentially interested in running for youth councillor next year, to start thinking about it, as the applications will be going out in early September.
Thank you. Councillor Shoesmith.
Thank you, Mayor Milligan. Very similar, except I just want to say I took the little girls for a walk the other day and stumbled into a car show. And wow, that was fun and cool. And I just think it's awesome that we're the sort of town where those sort of things just happen all over the time, or all over the place all the time. So yeah, nothing else.
Thank you, Councillor Adi Kelly.
Well, actually, I have a few things. First of all, I would really like to thank our youth counselor who I know is going to do some fabulous things in her life because she's amazing and has been an extremely dedicated member of council. So I really appreciate you. I attended a business banter and beer last week with the Chamber and the Elk Valley Wine and U-Brew. And I got to tell you, the hosts keep one-upping each other. They are quite amazing. And it is so nice to be at those functions and be able to speak to members in the business community. And along that same line, I attended the Downtown Business Working Group session. Again, a very impressive group of community business owners who are really working hard and had an excellent stakeholder presentation to the OCP task force as well. So thank you for the work you're doing to keep downtown vital. That's much appreciated. I am looking forward to quite a bit of volunteering. I've got a Tears and Gears, and it's hopefully not me that's crying. I've got helping at the Legion celebration for their 100 years, which I'm really looking forward to, helping at the Derby, which I'm also really looking forward to, although I'll just be head down handing people beverages until whenever. So that's usually what I do at those, and it's really quite fun. And I just wanted to say that it is very heartwarming to me to see a lot of organizations in the community bringing quality of life to the people that live here and collaborating with each other as well. I think we all know that it's been a challenging time for Fernie, and it's really great to see that there's so many partners bringing quality of life, because really we live in a beautiful place, and we actually should really appreciate that we are lucky that we live in such a beautiful place and that life isn't all as dire as it sometimes seems. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Yeah, I would echo, and Councillor Shoesmith started that ball rolling, that the inputs from civic society here make this community amazing. So thanks for raising that. I don't have much more to add. I attended the Downtown Business Working Group. I want to thank the organizers of that entire group, and our staff who are participating. Excellent presentation this morning. I was really, really impressed. And again, looking forward to the Legion centenary. And I did want to share that my wife and I last week, we went on holiday to the Okanagan, and it was very last minute. And so I apologize. I probably didn't do enough notification for folks involved, because we weren't going to go because the Okanagan was on fire. And we checked a couple of times before we left, and we stayed in Naramata, and the hotel operator eventually said, please come. There's nobody here. And while it was a little smoky, actually wasn't that much smokier than it was here at the time, they were desperate. And they housed some evacuees from Summerland, and many of them left the next day. They found other places to stay or they went home, and almost entirely the tourism community was dealing with cancellations. One fellow was telling us he operates the Naramata Inn. He laid off 25 people that Monday. So, my heart really, I was so grateful we went in the end and were able to support the local businesses and drink a substantial amount of Naramata wine on the beach. But we are there, but for the grace of God. We've just been very, very lucky in this valley. And I know Councillor Audie Kelly has raised it I think in the last meeting, as we listened to the meeting on the way home, about some people are really suffering in this province, and it's terrible to see. So it's important to do what we can to support. Anyway, with that, thank you for a very productive meeting, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening.